The hall was already full long before the evening program was supposed to begin. Soft lights hung from the high ceiling, and the quiet sound of people talking filled the space. Most of them were well-dressed, confident, and familiar with places like this. They came for one reason only. A famous pianist was going to perform, someone known across the world for skill, discipline, and pride in talent. Many believed this person represented the highest level of music. Near the back entrance, a young woman stepped inside without drawing attention. She paused for a moment, holding a simple bag close to her side. Her clothes were clean but plain, the kind that blended into crowds instead of standing out. She looked around slowly, as if she wanted to take in every detail. The polished floor reflected the lights above. The stage stood proudly at the front, and at its center was a grand piano, shining under the spotlight. She had never been inside a place like this before. Her heart beat a little faster, not from fear, but from something deeper. For her, music was not entertainment. It was comfort. It was memory. It was the only place where she felt fully understood. She found a seat along the side, not too close and not too far, and sat quietly while others continued chatting. People around her spoke about concerts they had attended, lessons they had taken, and awards they had won. Their voices carried confidence. She listened but did not join in. She had learned long ago that her story sounded small to people who had grown up with opportunities. Instead, she kept her thoughts to herself and watched the stage. Behind the curtains, activity was already underway. Staff members moved carefully, checking cables, adjusting lights, and polishing the piano one last time. The famous pianist arrived with an air of importance, greeting a few organizers and smiling for quick photos. There was laughter, light jokes, and an easy sense of control in every movement. This was someone used to being admired. At one point, the young woman stood up and slowly walked closer to the stage area, stopping near the edge where staff members were working. She did not cross any boundaries or interrupt anyone. She simply stood there, looking at the piano as if it were an old friend. Her eyes followed the curve of the instrument, and her fingers moved slightly in the air, as though touching invisible keys. One of the assistants noticed her and gave a polite but curious look. Before anything could be said, the famous pianist also glanced in her direction. The look lasted only a second, but it was enough. With a relaxed smile, the pianist made a casual comment about how many people dream of playing on such a stage without understanding the years of effort it takes. The tone was light, almost playful, but it carried an edge. A few people nearby laughed softly. It wasn't cruel laughter, but it wasn't kind either. The young woman felt her face warm slightly. She understood what the comment meant, even if it was not directed at her by name. Still, she did not respond. She lowered her eyes and stepped back quietly, returning to her seat. As she sat down, she took a deep breath. Moments like this were familiar. She had faced them many times before. People often judged her before hearing a single note. They saw her appearance, her silence, and assumed her limits. Over time, she had learned not to fight these assumptions. Music was not about proving anything. It was about truth. The lights dimmed slowly, and the audience settled into silence. The famous pianist walked onto the stage to loud applause. The confidence was clear in every step. After a brief acknowledgement, the performance began. The music was precise, controlled, and impressive. Each note landed exactly where it should. The audience listened closely, nodding, impressed by the skill. The young woman listened too, but in a different way. She felt the structure, the technique, the discipline. Yet something felt distant to her. The music was beautiful, but it did not touch the place in her heart where music lived. She closed her eyes and imagined how she would play the same piece. Not better, not worse, just differently. As the performance continued, a small technical issue caused a short pause. It was nothing serious, just enough to break the rhythm of the evening. The pianist joked lightly with the audience to keep the mood relaxed. In that moment, someone nearby whispered about how anyone could play if given the chance. Another person laughed and said talent like this could not be copied. The young woman remained quiet. Her hands rested on her lap, steady and calm. Inside her, memories stirred. Late nights practicing on worn keys. Neighbors complaining about the noise. Moments of doubt and moments of peace. Music had been with her through every high and low. She did not think of herself as special. She simply knew how deeply she felt every sound. When the performance resumed, she leaned forward slightly, listening again. Something inside her felt ready, though she did not yet know why. She wasn't planning anything. She wasn't expecting anything. She was simply present, open to whatever might come next. As the final notes of the piece faded, applause filled the hall once more. The famous pianist stood and bowed, smiling confidently. The evening seemed to be going exactly as expected. No one noticed the quiet woman sitting along the side, except for the way her eyes stayed fixed on the piano, as if her story with it was far from over. What no one knew at that moment was that this ordinary evening was slowly turning into something unforgettable. A single chance, still unseen, was waiting just ahead, ready to change how everyone in that room would remember this night forever. The young woman left the concert hall later that evening feeling a mix of excitement and quiet determination. She walked slowly through the streets, the sounds of the city echoing around her, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about the piano, the music, and the way the famous pianist had smiled. There was no anger, no jealousy, only a strange spark of possibility that she could not ignore. Her story began many years ago, in a small, modest home where music was more of a dream than a reality. She had no grand piano, no lessons, no teacher who could guide her through the complex world of notes and melodies. What she had was an old, slightly broken keyboard, inherited from a relative who had stopped playing long ago. The keys were worn and some barely worked, but to her it was a treasure. She would spend hours at night, after chores and work, letting her fingers wander over the keys, experimenting, feeling, learning. It had not been easy. Neighbors would complain about the noise. Electricity bills were high, and her family often reminded her that music was not practical. Yet every time she played, she felt a freedom that nothing else could give her. It was her own world, quiet, safe, and alive. She practiced the way she could, by listening to music on a small radio, imitating what she heard, learning slowly but with passion. School had been another challenge. She was not a prodigy by any standard. She struggled with certain subjects and often felt out of place among children who had more advantages. Music became her way to shine, even if no one knew about it. Her skill grew quietly, patiently, in the small hours of the night, and with each new melody, she felt a little more confident, a little closer to the person she wanted to be. Over the years, she faced more than just financial struggles. Life was filled with moments when it seemed easier to give up. Friends moved away, teachers doubted her abilities, and some family members urged her to pursue something more stable. There were days when she would sit at the keyboard and cry, feeling as though her dreams were too big for the life she had. Yet somehow, she returned to the piano every single night, because music was not just a dream. It was survival, a way to keep herself together. By the time she had reached adulthood, her talent had grown quietly alongside her life. She could play complex pieces by ear, feel the emotion behind a song, and adapt music to express her own feelings. People around her were unaware of this hidden skill. Her coworkers, friends, and neighbors often saw her as ordinary, someone who kept to herself, shy and polite. Few could imagine the depth of her connection to music, and she did not advertise it. There was no need. That night at the concert, as she listened to the famous pianist play with precision and grace, memories of her struggles came rushing back. She remembered the nights spent in dimly lit rooms, practicing scales until her fingers ached. She remembered the moments of frustration when a piece would not sound right. She remembered the small victories, the times she finally played a melody that made her feel proud. Listening to the performance, she realized that all those experiences had prepared her for this very moment, even if she did not know it yet. The famous pianist's words and laughter had not stung her, though they might have hurt someone else. She understood that the world often judged by appearances, by confidence, or by background. Talent could be overlooked if it was quiet, if it did not announce itself boldly. She had lived with that truth all her life. But now, there was a different feeling, a kind of quiet courage rising inside her. It was as if something in the universe was giving her permission to step forward. After the concert, she returned home, her mind still alive with melodies. She opened her small notebook and began to write down ideas, sketches of music that had been forming in her head. She thought about what she might play one day, not for fame or recognition, but simply because she needed to. Every note, every rhythm, was a story of her life, her struggles, her moments of joy, and her endless hope. Her family noticed a change in her that evening. She moved with a new calmness, a quiet energy that suggested she had seen something important. They asked her about the concert, and she smiled but did not boast. She did not need to explain herself. Music had always spoken louder than words, and tonight, she felt that it had spoken for her in ways she had never expected. She thought about opportunities that had never come her way. Many people with talent had doors opened for them early, teachers who encouraged them, instruments they could afford, lessons they could take. She had none of that, and yet, she had learned, in her own way, that persistence and passion could carry someone far. Music was not about privilege. It was about connection, feeling, and the courage to keep going even when the world seemed indifferent. Her mind wandered to the people at the concert hall, the audience who had only seen a polished performance, the famous pianist who believed himself untouchable. She wondered what they would think if they could see her life, the countless hours of invisible practice, the tears, the solitude, the joy of finally creating something that sounded right. They could not see it, and perhaps they never would, but that did not matter. Music was hers, and it had made her strong. As she sat quietly that night, she began to imagine the stage, the piano, and the moment when she might sit before it herself. She did not yet know how it would happen, or if anyone would notice, but she felt the possibility stirring inside her. There was no fear now, only anticipation. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that she could step forward, that her life of quiet struggle might lead to something extraordinary. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. Every obstacle, every disappointment, every night of solitary practice had built her resilience. She realized that her talent was not just the result of ability, but of persistence, of refusing to give up when nothing seemed to encourage her. Music had taught her patience, focus, and the ability to find beauty in small, unexpected places. The next morning, she woke with a sense of purpose. She began to practice not hurriedly, not with pressure, but with calm intention. Each note she played reminded her of where she had come from, how far she had traveled, and what she was capable of. She thought about the audience she had witnessed the night before, the famous pianist, and the way the room had responded to music. She did not play to prove herself to them. She played because she had to, because the music demanded it. Her neighbors might still hear the faint sound of the keyboard through the thin walls of her home. Some might ignore it, some might complain. But she did not mind. Each sound was a step forward, a note closer to a moment she could feel coming, even if she could not yet see it. There was a quiet confidence growing in her, a sense that she was ready for something unexpected, something that could change everything. That quiet evening, that small, seemingly ordinary night of listening and reflection, marked the turning point in her life. It was not the applause that would define her. It was not recognition from others that mattered. It was the acknowledgement within herself that she had the courage, the skill, and the heart to continue, to create, and perhaps, to astonish the world when the moment finally arrived. And though she could not know it yet, that moment was closer than she imagined. Every struggle she had endured, every quiet hour of practice, every small act of determination, had prepared her for a chance that might come sooner than anyone expected. She was ready to meet it, not with arrogance, not with fear, but with the quiet power of a life lived with music at its center. The next evening arrived with an unusual sense of calm. The young woman had spent the day preparing, not in a grand way, but with quiet focus. She practiced familiar melodies on her worn keyboard, letting each note remind her of why she loved music. She had no idea what the evening might bring, but she felt a strange anticipation, as if something important was about to happen. The concert hall looked different tonight. Perhaps it was her perception, sharpened by expectation. The lights seemed brighter, the audience slightly larger, the energy a little more intense. People were taking their seats, murmuring among themselves, dressed in fine clothes and exuding the confidence of regular concertgoers. The famous pianist arrived, greeted with applause, moving with the same air of assured skill as the previous evening. But tonight, something was different. There was a small pause before the performance began, a moment that seemed to stretch longer than usual. The young woman found her usual seat along the side, sitting quietly. Her bag was tucked beside her, her eyes fixed on the stage, but her mind was calm. She had spent countless nights imagining what it would be like to sit at that piano. She had not allowed herself to hope for anything, but now a quiet courage was growing inside her. She understood that opportunity sometimes comes in ways no one expects. As the concert began, she listened intently. The famous pianist played with precision and elegance, each note falling exactly where it should. The audience responded with admiration, but she noticed small details others overlooked. The pianist's posture, the way fingers moved, the subtle pauses that gave the music life. She admired the skill, but inside, she felt a quiet voice urging her forward, reminding her of the hours of practice she had endured. Suddenly, a technical issue arose. A microphone slipped slightly, or a light flickered. The pianist paused and smiled at the audience, making a small joke to lighten the mood. The audience laughed, and the atmosphere relaxed. Then, almost casually, the pianist said, "If anyone feels brave enough, there's a piano here. Give it a try if you dare." It was meant lightly, perhaps as a humorous challenge. Most people laughed at the thought. The audience assumed no one would step forward. The young woman felt her heart skip a beat. A moment that seemed ordinary to others held a strange possibility for her. She hesitated for only a second before rising from her seat. She walked slowly toward the stage, keeping her movements calm. People glanced at her, some whispering, others shaking their heads, expecting nothing. The famous pianist noticed her and raised an eyebrow, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. He expected nothing remarkable. She was quiet, modest, and unassuming, hardly the image of someone who could captivate a crowd. She reached the stage and paused, her eyes resting on the grand piano. She did not speak. She did not announce herself. She simply approached the instrument as if greeting an old friend. The audience grew curious, some amused, some skeptical. The famous pianist leaned back, watching, a subtle smile still on his face. This was a small, unexpected challenge, and he believed it would end quickly. The young woman sat at the piano bench, adjusting herself slightly, and then rested her hands over the keys. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool surface beneath her fingers. There was no fear, only awareness, a readiness that came from years of preparation in solitude. The hall was silent, every eye fixed on her. Even the famous pianist had gone still, intrigued despite himself. She began to play. The first few notes were soft, almost tentative, as if testing the space and the audience. Then, something shifted. Her fingers moved with confidence, drawing from memory, emotion, and experience. The music began to flow, not mechanically, but with feeling, carrying the weight of her life, her struggles, her hopes, and her quiet determination. The audience listened in a mixture of surprise and awe, sensing the authenticity in every note. The famous pianist's expression changed as he recognized something rare. The young woman was not merely imitating the music she had heard. She was expressing herself, telling her own story through the piano. Each phrase was deliberate yet flowing, controlled yet full of emotion. The hall was still, the only sound coming from the piano, echoing against the walls and filling every corner with resonance. People shifted in their seats, leaning forward, unable to look away. Her music was not about impressing the audience or proving a point. It was an honest reflection of her life, the hardships she had endured, the nights spent alone with her keyboard, the moments of doubt and joy. Every note carried that experience. The famous pianist, accustomed to skill and precision, felt an unfamiliar sensation, a sense of awe, respect, and humility. He had expected talent, but this was something deeper. It was truth rendered through sound. Some members of the audience felt chills. Others had tears forming in their eyes. They had come expecting entertainment, a polished performance by a known artist, but they were witnessing something rare. Music that came from the heart, unfiltered and genuine. The young woman's story unfolded in sound, each measure a reflection of years of quiet dedication, resilience, and love for her art. As the piece continued, her confidence grew. She did not rush, did not exaggerate, simply let the music flow naturally. The hall seemed to breathe with her, every note carrying a weight that could not be ignored. Even the famous pianist could not help but move subtly with the rhythm, acknowledging silently the skill and emotion before him. The final notes approached. They were gentle, soft, and lingering, carrying a sense of closure and release. The last chord resonated throughout the hall, a vibration that seemed to linger in the air long after the piano had fallen silent. The young woman lifted her hands slowly, letting the echoes fade naturally. She did not look triumphant. She did not smile broadly. She simply sat quietly, breathing, allowing the moment to settle. For a long moment, there was silence. No one knew how to react. It was not disbelief, but respect, wonder, and a touch of humility. People felt they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that could not be captured in words alone. The famous pianist stood frozen, the smirk gone, replaced by admiration and an unexpected warmth. He had underestimated her, judged her by appearances and assumptions, and now faced the reality of her undeniable talent. Slowly, applause began to rise. First, a few claps, tentative and careful, then stronger, louder, until the entire hall erupted in appreciation. The young woman remained seated, her eyes reflecting calm and satisfaction rather than pride. She had not performed for recognition. She had performed because she could not do otherwise. The audience, however, could not stop expressing their awe. The famous pianist approached her, offering a genuine nod and a rare smile of respect. He acknowledged her skill openly, without words of mockery or judgment. It was a silent recognition, but one that carried weight. The young woman simply nodded in return, her heart steady, her mind calm. She had not sought approval, yet it had arrived in a way she had never imagined. As the audience continued to applaud, she stood slowly, stepping away from the piano with quiet dignity. The moment was not about fame, nor about defeating anyone. It was about truth, resilience, and the ability to express one's life through art. The hall would remember her performance, the honesty of her music, and the courage it took to step forward when no one expected her to. That night marked a turning point. The young woman understood that talent could not be hidden forever, that dedication, passion, and courage would eventually be recognized. She did not seek validation, but she found it nonetheless. Her life of quiet preparation, resilience, and love for music had led her to this moment, a moment that would leave a lasting impression on everyone present. The hall remained quiet, almost holding its breath as the young woman's fingers glided over the keys. Each note carried a story, and it was as if the piano itself recognized her intent. She did not rush, did not show off. Every sound was deliberate, flowing naturally, rising and falling with a life of its own. The audience, initially curious, now found themselves captivated, unable to look away or think about anything else. The famous pianist watched, astonishment clear in his expression. He had performed countless concerts, judged many young musicians, and rarely encountered someone whose music resonated so deeply. He had expected a modest, perhaps unremarkable performance, but what unfolded before him was something rare, something beyond skill. It was not just the notes she played. It was the emotion she poured into them, the subtle storytelling hidden in every chord, every pause, every gentle rise and fall. The young woman's life unfolded in sound. The music spoke of late nights, of quiet dedication, of struggles unseen by the world. It spoke of hope, of resilience, of the determination to continue even when the path seemed impossible. She was not merely performing a song. She was telling her story, revealing the essence of her journey through sound. The audience felt it without fully understanding it, as if the music bypassed their minds and went straight to their hearts. Some listeners closed their eyes, letting themselves feel the weight and beauty of the melody. Others leaned forward, holding their breath with anticipation, trying to capture every nuance. Even the famous pianist, whose expertise allowed him to notice every detail, found himself moved, unable to analyze or critique. The performance transcended technique. It was pure expression, authentic and unfiltered. Her fingers moved with a confidence that had been earned through years of practice in solitude. Each measure carried layers of feeling, subtle shifts that told of victories and defeats, moments of joy and despair. She did not perform to impress. She performed because it was her way of communicating what words could never express. The audience could sense this authenticity, and it created a shared connection, a silent understanding between the performer and those listening. The music swelled, filling the hall, echoing against walls and ceilings, resonating deep within every person present. There was a moment when even time seemed to pause, the ordinary world fading away, leaving only the sound and the story it carried. Listeners felt chills, a lump in their throats, tears threatening to fall. They had come for entertainment, for skill, for a show, but they were experiencing something far more profound. They were witnessing truth expressed through music. The famous pianist had stopped smiling. He watched with a mixture of humility and awe. He realized he had underestimated her, judged her by appearance and expectation. He had assumed talent could be measured by confidence or reputation. Now he understood that true talent often arrives quietly, unnoticed, and when it finally reveals itself, it carries a power that cannot be ignored. He felt a sense of respect growing within him, a desire to acknowledge what he was witnessing. The melody continued to evolve, shifting from gentle, almost whispering tones to powerful, commanding chords that filled the entire hall. It was as if the young woman was painting with sound, each note a brushstroke, each phrase a color that added depth and life to the canvas she created. The audience could feel the stories she had lived, the hours of silent practice, the nights of doubt and determination. Every sound carried authenticity, and that authenticity was impossible to ignore. People in the audience began to exchange glances, recognizing the rarity of the moment. The hall was usually filled with polite applause, small gestures of appreciation, but tonight, there was something different. They were witnessing a performance that transcended ordinary expectation, that touched something deep within them. They felt the performer's soul, the quiet strength that had brought her here, and it demanded recognition. The music became more intimate, almost as if she were speaking directly to each listener. Soft, delicate notes intertwined with deeper, resonant chords, creating a sense of journey. The audience felt the highs and lows of her story, the quiet moments of reflection, the powerful surges of emotion. Every person present was drawn into her world, unable to resist the pull of her music. Her eyes remained calm, focused on the piano, her body relaxed yet deliberate. She did not look at the audience, did not seek approval. She only let the music flow, letting the years of preparation, the nights of solitary practice, the moments of struggle and triumph, find their voice. The hall seemed to breathe. With her, the audience rising and falling with the rhythm, caught in a shared experience of wonder. The famous pianist took a step closer, moved by something he could not fully explain. He had seen talent, brilliance, even genius, but this was different. This was authenticity. This was life distilled into music, unfiltered, raw, and beautiful. He felt humbled, realizing that the world often overlooks quiet dedication, that assumptions and judgments can be misleading, and that sometimes the most extraordinary talent comes in unexpected forms. The climax of the song approached, a series of notes that were both delicate and commanding. The young woman's fingers danced over the keys with precision and feeling, each sound carrying weight and purpose. The audience could feel the culmination of her journey, the story reaching its peak. The air was electric, charged with emotion, as if the entire hall was suspended in the magic of the moment. Finally, she brought the piece to a gentle close. The last chord lingered, echoing softly, leaving a sense of completeness and peace. The hall remained still for a heartbeat longer than usual, as if no one could quite believe what they had just experienced. Then, a soft sigh, followed by a wave of applause, starting quietly but building rapidly. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some wiping away tears, others looking at each other in awe. The young woman simply sat, her face serene, allowing the audience's reaction to wash over her without pride or ego. The famous pianist approached, no longer smiling in amusement, but with genuine respect. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the extraordinary talent he had witnessed. There was no need for words. The connection had been made through music, through honesty, through a lifetime of preparation and dedication that now had a voice. He understood the significance of the moment, and he recognized that it would stay with him and the audience for a long time. The young woman rose slowly, walking away from the piano with quiet dignity. She had not sought fame, recognition, or praise. She had only followed her heart, her passion, and her connection to music. And yet, in doing so, she had left a lasting impression on everyone present. The hall had experienced a rare and beautiful moment, one that would be remembered not just for the notes played, but for the emotion, honesty, and courage behind them. That night, she left the concert hall with a calm sense of fulfillment. She understood that true talent is not always loud or obvious. It often grows quietly, nurtured in solitude, tested by life's challenges, and revealed only when the moment is right. Her journey was proof that persistence, passion, and authenticity could create something extraordinary, something that touches the hearts of everyone who witnesses it. The song she played would linger in the memories of the audience, a testament to the power of music and the quiet strength of a determined heart. The applause continued long after the final note had faded. People in the hall were still rising to their feet, clapping, some cheering, others wiping tears from their eyes. The young woman stood quietly, absorbing the moment. She did not smile broadly or bow dramatically. She did not seek recognition. She had simply shared her music, and in doing so, she had touched everyone present in a way words could never describe. The famous pianist approached her once more, this time with a calm expression, his earlier smirk replaced by genuine admiration. He spoke quietly, enough for only her to hear, acknowledging her talent and the courage it took to step forward. She nodded in response, feeling a sense of understanding that went beyond words. There was no need for praise or validation. The connection had already been made, through the music and the honesty she had poured into it. Backstage, organizers and staff whispered among themselves. They had never expected what had just occurred. Many had been skeptical, assuming this young woman could not possibly hold the audience's attention. But now, they were witnessing the impact of raw talent, of dedication, and of courage. People realized that appearances and assumptions could be misleading, that true skill often comes quietly and unexpectedly. The young woman returned to her seat for a moment, letting the echoes of the music settle in her mind. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the nights of practice on a small, worn keyboard, the sacrifices, the doubts, and the moments of quiet joy. Every note she had played carried a piece of her life, her struggles, her perseverance. And now everyone in the hall had felt it too, even if they did not know her story fully. As the evening wound down, people continued to talk about her performance. Conversations were filled with astonishment and admiration. Some could not believe what they had just heard. Others found themselves reflecting on the courage it must have taken to step forward in a room filled with experienced musicians and an audience that expected only excellence. The young woman moved quietly through the crowd, receiving nods of respect and occasional words of praise. She did not respond with grand gestures. She only offered a calm smile, acknowledging the recognition without letting it define her. The famous pianist lingered near the piano, observing her from a distance. He had performed countless times, witnessed immense talent, and judged many musicians. But tonight had taught him something he had not expected. That true music could not be measured by appearances, confidence, or reputation alone. Talent that comes from dedication, persistence, and authenticity holds a power that cannot be ignored. He felt a deep respect for her, a recognition that her music had revealed something extraordinary. Outside the concert hall, the young woman walked quietly through the night. The city lights reflected off wet streets, and the sounds of the evening surrounded her. She did not feel the need to recount every detail of the performance. She did not crave headlines or attention. She simply felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense that she had honored her journey, her struggles, and her passion. Music had been her companion through every challenge, and now it had spoken for her in a way that touched countless hearts. She remembered the first time she had touched a piano, the small, worn instrument in her childhood home. She had not known if she would ever play in front of anyone, or if anyone would ever hear her music. Yet, every night of practice, every moment of persistence, had prepared her for this moment. The concert hall had been a stage, yes, but more importantly, it had been a place where her dedication and love for music could be shared openly. The recognition she received was not the goal. It was the natural result of honesty, effort, and passion. The next days brought quiet changes. People who had witnessed the performance spoke of it repeatedly, sharing the story of a young woman who had stepped forward with courage and talent. The famous pianist mentioned her to colleagues, acknowledging that he had misjudged her and expressing admiration for the depth of her skill. Invitations and opportunities began to appear, small at first, but significant. She did not pursue them aggressively. Instead, she accepted what felt right, continuing to play and share her music on her terms. Her life did not change overnight. She continued to face challenges, balancing work, family responsibilities, and her music. But now, there was a sense of validation that came not from external recognition alone, but from the knowledge that her persistence, her passion, and her courage had made an impact. The music had spoken for her, and the world had listened. This understanding gave her a quiet confidence that could not be shaken by doubt or criticism. Over time, her story inspired others. Young musicians, especially those who felt overlooked or underestimated, saw in her a reflection of their own struggles and possibilities. She became a quiet example of how dedication, honesty, and courage could lead to extraordinary moments. People began to understand that talent is not always loud or flashy, that it often grows in silence, nurtured by commitment and love for the craft. The famous pianist occasionally crossed paths with her again, offering encouragement, discussing music, and sharing insights. Their relationship was not one of competition or hierarchy, but of mutual respect. He acknowledged that she had taught him an important lesson, that assumptions can be misleading, that every individual carries unique gifts, and that true artistry is measured not by appearance or reputation, but by the depth of expression and connection it evokes. Years later, she would look back on that night in the concert hall with a sense of gratitude. It was a turning point, yes, but more importantly, it was a moment of truth. Her life of quiet dedication, her perseverance through doubt and difficulty, had culminated in a performance that left an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. The music had carried her story, and it had been received with honesty and respect. Her journey continued as it always had. She practiced, composed, and shared music in ways that felt meaningful. Opportunities arose, some public, some private, but she approached each with the same focus and care she had always applied. The recognition she had received that night was not a goal, but a reminder that perseverance, authenticity, and passion could create profound impact. Music remained her anchor, her expression, and her voice. In the end, the young woman's story was one of quiet triumph. It was a testament to the power of persistence, the importance of honesty, and the courage to step forward when the world least expects it. She had faced doubt, judgment, and obstacles, yet she had remained true to herself and her craft. And in doing so, she had left a lasting impression, not just on a famous pianist or on a single audience, but on everyone who witnessed her extraordinary performance and understood, even briefly, the depth of her journey. Her music continued to resonate, reminding people that talent and dedication often grow quietly, in unseen places, and that courage, even when understated, can lead to moments that leave the world speechless. She had proven that true artistry is not about recognition or fame, but about expression, truth, and the impact it leaves on those who are willing to listen. And in that truth, she found fulfillment beyond measure, a life shaped and enriched by the music she loved.